Hi guys, it's Sue Ellen at Abbey Home Loans. Well, it's Friday night. I'm just getting ready to take off from the office, but I wanted to remind you that this weekend is daylight savings time. Remember, spring forward, fall back. Turn your clock forward at 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Well, you can do it Saturday night before you go to bed if you want. But anyway, your computer and your smartphone should update automatically, and that'll help you if it's like my household where my husband changed a few clocks, I changed a couple, and the next thing we know, we don't know which ones are right and where we're at. Anyway, check your phone. It made me start thinking, about the history of daylight savings time. I mean, up until just a few years ago, it was the first weekend in April and the last weekend in October. And now it's the second week in March and the first weekend in November. So I went back to look. I remembered, talk about the change a few years ago, but really hadn't given a thought, I guess. Anyway, so what I found out was that the original daylight savings time was in 1916, and it was started by the Germans who were trying to conserve fuel during World War I. And then the United States got on board with it in 1918. At the end of the World War I, though, it was canceled because there was just so much controversy over it. But then in 1942, President Roosevelt put it back into effect for the Second World War. Now, he called it wartime, and it was year-round until September of 45 when they canceled it altogether. So from 1945 until 1966, there was no law regarding daylight savings time. But many states liked the idea. So across the United States, various states and locales each had their own start and stop time for daylight savings time. It was kind of chaos. It was actually the transportation industry who pressured the federal government to make some kind of standardization because they said it was just too hard to travel back and forth across the United States like they did. So in 1966, they passed a bill that said daylight savings time would be from the first Sunday in April through the last Sunday in October. Well, that was good, and any state who didn't want to accept it could opt out, but the rule was the entire state had to opt out. No county or locale could decide they wanted to be in. It had to be statewide. At that time, the only two states who opted out were Arizona and Michigan. Now, Michigan came on board in the mid-70s, but Arizona has never had daylight savings time. And now, of course, it's Arizona and Hawaii who don't have the daylight savings time. Every other state abides. They do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. So across the United States, it changes as the time changes, interestingly enough. So, we have a couple hours as you go along when the times have shifted. But that was more consistent than anything else they could come up with. So from 1966 to 2007, it was actually the Energy Protection Act of 2005 that made the change to now. Our new rule is the second week in March and the first week in November. Little trivia for you. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. In the meantime, remember, if you have a tip or a little bit of trivia or what that you'd like me to pass along, please send me an email at suellen@abbeyhomeloans.com. In the meantime, have a great